Well, we're really starting to get there now. So let's just progress on and get this markup out of this MVC application for this head component initially. And let's start to see this lighting up in our Blazor WebAssembly application. It's going to be really exciting because we're going to start building our first components, which means laying out the component structure, going through all this end-to-end, looking at what we need to replace from the MVC Razor markup to the Razor component markup in Blazor. It's going to be great, so let's get started. Okay, welcome back. So let's just pick up from exactly where we left off. And there are a number of things that I'd like to do just to kind of clean up a little bit here before we progress with our first component in our Blazor WebAssembly app. Now we've got some changes which need to be applied to Git. Now we're on the main branch at the moment, and I'm not a big fan of committing directly to the main branch. I'd really rather create a pull request and kind of protect that branch from changes so that we can do code reviews, etc. So let's create a new branch with these changes and commit them on that branch. So we'll just go for feature, let's just say initial structure, just to kind of get us going, and then we can actually start to see that take shape. We're going to base it on main. We're going to check that out immediately, and we're going to bring the changes, as you can see here, from the main branch onto our feature initial structure branch, and continue checkout. And now we've got our changes on that new branch. So before we kind of go any further, let's commit what we have at the moment so that we can kind of keep the clarity. And just to kind of recap, we've got the CSS in there, we've got the image from the favicon we added, we've got the JS with the plugins and all of the dependencies that are currently in the MVC app, and then we've got the index changes that we made to gain some confidence in the last round. So let's just commit this and just say initial codification added assets plus applied meta markup. That'll do. Okay, great. So we've got that there. We can push that a little later, but the nice thing is that we're dealing with a clean slate now to add our changes. And then what's also going to be nice later on is that we'll be able to look through the history, the branch history in Git, and actually see how we built this, how we built these incremental changes step by step, so that it's not just, again, one big commit, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to anyone. And you know what, I've just had a thought. Probably what we'll do is actually create these branches by the episodes that we're actually working on. I think that would actually be more advantageous to the viewers. So let's just sort that out now while we kind of got it on our head. So let's create a branch called episodes. Then what we can do is make this part 3, because that's what we're committing at the moment. So we'll base that on our initial structure branch here. We can tidy these branches up in a little while, but I think this is actually going to make more sense. So we've got the part 3 branch there now, and then what that means is that we can actually commit that to Git. So I'm going to push that Okay, let's just go check the Git repository. So if we have a look at this now and just go into the branches, what we'll see is we've got this episodes and part 3, and we'll build on that and just put all the parts in as we progress. So at the end of this, there'll be an episodes part 4, and that'll be quite nice actually to be able to go back and look at the changes, so we can just see the commit there that we've just added with the 82 changed files. Awesome. So just to be consistent, let's, before we get going, actually create a new branch now, which is episodes, and then we'll call this part 4, and then we can actually just start committing directly to that as part of our changes today, and then that's just ready to push and merge in at the end of this session. So there we go, we're on the right branch now and we're ready to go. So if we start now to look at our reference header component, so as we said previously, we're using this partial static header full menu partial view that we want to start with in terms of converting that into a Blazor component. So let's just have a quick look at it and see what's going on here. So we can see that it's got a layout set to null, and it's got a little bit of styling here, and then we've got this header section with the div and a link, and this is basically the logo being shown in the top bar. And if we just run that just super quick so that you can get a quick view of that, that's basically talking about this section here. So this is comprised of the logo, which changes based on some context, and actually if we look at the code, we can see here that based on the viewbag.page, it's actually loading a different logo. So there are a number of different assets that we need to pull in for that. So let's go do that quickly and get these assets into play. It looks as if it's using a number of different versions of the logo. So let's go into the image, v1 under logo. There it is. Let's just open that up in our file explorer. Okay, so we've basically just got different colored versions of the logo, some with a tagline, some without. So let's just grab that v1 folder. And again, as we have done before, what we can do is just drop that into our Blazor WebAssembly application so that it's actually got these assets available when we come to actually render. So let's drop those in there. So that's that done. You see that showing up in Git now. And let's go back to the header component and see what we've got going on here. So viewbag.page is not going to be available to us in WebAssembly, so we'll need to come up with a method of managing that, which we'll do. Okay, so let's just continue down. There's the end of the logo. We've got this nav bar icon for mobile, so that'll be the hamburger menu that will appear when it's responsive with a reduced width. We've got the nav bar itself. So here it's doing a bit of logic to determine the viewbag.page. Yet again, it's doing a switch on that. If it's home, do nothing. We've got some specific links being rendered if it's not the home page, and then based on which page we're on here, it's changing some of the links. Yeah, one thing to note here is that we've got the use of controllers and actions in MVC, which is something we won't have available in our Blazor WebAssembly, so we'll need to make a change there. Again, it's referencing this viewbag.page, so we're definitely going to need to come up with a mechanism for dealing with that. Most of this is fairly straightforward. Don't really envisage any big issues here apart from those two issues to solve. We can still put the styling in line. That will work just fine. Okay, cool. I think we're ready to create our first header component. So let's just go ahead and grab all of this markup for this particular partial view, and then we'll drop into our Blazor WebAssembly. We'll have a look at what's going on here. Right, so there are a number of different ways we could skin this. I'm very much in favour for Blazor applications in general of using feature folders, which enable you to put in all of the components and markup and code and services inside a root folder for that specific feature. But in this case, as we're trying to mimic the site, and if we just kind of look at the site structure, it is a website. That website is predominantly made up of pages which don't have an awful lot of services, and at the moment at least don't have an awful lot of features beyond brochureware, which is serving static content. So I'm kind of torn, but my gut feeling is that we should go with a page structure for mimicking the areas of the site. So we've got these kind of top level areas which we could potentially go with, and then look at creating component directories for shared components, and then also looking at utilizing some of the layout components together as well. And what I mean by that is we're talking about the header at the moment. So how we could skin this is that we have the header component, we have the layout component, the footer component, and then as we start to build up these page sections, if any of them are shared across the site, like for example this carousel, then we could use the shared component model for that. But where a page is very specific to a specific area of the site, so if we go to this .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid page, some of these sections are going to be specific to this particular technology. So it's going to be a bit of a mix and match, but I think we'll follow the way that the site's laid out, because logically, when you come to make changes, you're going to think of the site, and if the structure that we create mimics that, it's going to make it super easy to actually identify and locate and make changes simply. So I think we'll go with that. So on that basis, if we go back to the site here, we've got a layout folder which actually is working really well, I think, for us. We've got pages as well, and we've got our home page in there at the moment. And if we just have a super quick look at that, what we're finding is that this is a Razor component, but what makes it stand out in terms of it being a rootable page is the fact that it's got this page directive here, and the fact that this just shows / is the default root, that if we're not provided with a root, that this will be the home page that the Blazor routing is navigating to. And yet again, if some of these terms are unfamiliar, please check out our Blazor Fundamentals series, where we go over some of these topics in detail: components, page lifecycle, routing, and a lot of these core concepts as well. So check that out if any of this is going slightly above your head. And one of the other things that is interesting to note here is the answer to the issue that arose in part 3, where the page title was being overridden. And this again is part of the header content that's actually being injected into the page by using this special page component called page title, which is essentially hooking into the rendering pipeline. So this is how on each page we would actually go about setting the page title. So not a lot of else going on here, just some simple markup. If we have a quick look at the main layout, apart from the fact that it inherits from this layout component base, we can see that it's actually rendering the body of our component. And in this case, that component would be the home page. So what we want to do now is create our header component. So let's start by adding it. I think it's probably a good place to start adding it to the layout, because this header component does comprise the layout for the majority of pages. And if that starts to change, and if the header starts becoming a bit more dynamic, we can look at adding parameters and ways to add logic to that header component. But for now, let's just keep it simple, start simple, and add in a new Razor component. And we will call this header. Now, just one thing to note, although it might be completely obvious that we have a pages subfolder here, what I quite like to do, especially with page components, is actually name them with a convention. So I'm actually going to go with home page .razor, and I just find that however you structure your components, if you use this page convention for routable pages, it just becomes a little bit easier to quickly identify what is a routable page, because as we said previously, the only thing that differentiates a page component is this page directive. So that's the convention that I'm going to go with for the rest of this series for the pages. So coming back to our header component, we've got that there. Let's place that in our home page and see if we can just get that lighting up. So we can just literally pop in header there, and we're not passing in any parameters or nesting any other content, so we can literally just self-close that header component. So a couple of things to note: the naming of a component does need to start with an uppercase character. It needs to match the naming of the file, essentially. So we've done that. It's been able to pick that up. How has it located the fact that we've included that file? Well, something's already been done for us as part of this boilerplate WebAssembly structuring, and you can see here that it's actually already targeting or using Blazor WebAssembly .layout, and that .layout is actually that subfolder there. So as we create further subfolders, a nice way of having all our includes, our usings in one place, is to utilize this imports.razor. This can be done on a page by page, component by component basis, but for all of the shared areas, for certainly for things like layout and pages, etc., definitely worth having them here, nice, clean and concise, and reduces on markup. Okay, cool. So we've got our home page there with the home page component. Let's just run this. What have we got in the header component? Nothing other than the fact that we've got H3 header. So let's just change that to component so that we're just clear that it is actually this that we're rendering and not just something else that says header. So we'll just run that quickly. And there we go, header component. So we know that we're quite easily able to add the component to the page. So now what we want to do is actually take that rendered markup that we had in our MVC page and drop that into that header component, and then we'll just kind of deal with the fallout line by line. So one of the things that we are going to need potentially is a code block. So we'll leave that in there, and then we'll just literally overwrite the rest with the markup that's coming from our MVC page. So we've got a few squiggly lines, there's a few things not being understood here. So the layout here is not relevant because that's being handled actually from our app.razor, where we're actually specifying what our default layout is, and that is main layout, which we had a look at a moment ago, which really contains nothing other than just rendering out the body of the component that it wraps. So nothing special going on there. So we can definitely remove this layout statement, and we'll leave that style in there for the moment and see where we get. So we probably want to utilize this switching because we're really trying to kind of migrate, and this kind of goes back to the reason why I brought all of the CSS and JavaScript over rather than trying to sift and clean and refine. It's because quite often with something like this, you want to gain some confirmation that everything works as it did in the new technology. And if you're not careful, you can start refactoring a little bit too early. In this particular case, because it's just a brochureware application, there are some advantages to having it working like for like, and then we can actually look at refining, and we will do some refinements for sure, because it's a good opportunity to do that as part of the migration. But I'm looking for confidence that we've not missed anything, that we've got everything coming across, and we can actually take everything that we've got currently in our ASP.NET Core MVC web application over to Blazor WebAssembly without too much drama, and then we can look at refining and refactoring as we go. So we've got the switch statement looking for page. So what we could do is actually add a string variable to our code section, which actually covers that page variable, so that we've actually got that in use. So let's just pop this parameter in here, and the reason why we're going to do this as a parameter, component parameter that is so that we can actually pass in our page from the parent page, from the hosted page. So for each page that wants to utilize this header component, we can actually pass in a parameter, and I'm just going to default that to home for now. We can worry about defaulting that another way in a little while, but let's just focus on these squigglies. So what have we got here? So we've got viewbag.page. We haven't got a viewbag available to us, but we have now got a page. So that's a nice easy fix for that. Let's do that for all of these instances quickly. Perfect, nearly there. Menu items. Okay, so that kind of fixes that pretty quickly. Let's have a look and see how we're getting on, because we've got no warnings for this page at the moment. Let's just see what happens if we try and run it. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much as expected. You can see that it's got some logo links there, but it's failing to actually locate those logos. So we've got a bit of an issue with the relative links to our images, and we've got some list items here, some unordered list with some list items, and that's failing to pick up the styling, which is as expected because we've added the CSS, but we haven't yet referenced the correct CSS style sheets, or JavaScript for that matter, in our index page. So we've made some good progress today in this episode with regards to creating our first Blazor component, which starts to take advantage of this component model within Blazor, and we're going to explore that in much more detail as these episodes progress. But we've been able to take a page section, which is razor markup from our MVC ASP.NET Core application, and apply that to a Blazor component so that we can actually start to see this migration taking shape. If you're enjoying the content on this channel so far, please like and subscribe, and jam that notification bell as well so that you get notified when we add new content. What are we going to look at next? Well, we're going to expand on what we've got. We're going to add new components. We're going to start structuring our components in the next episode so that it actually starts to take advantage of some of the reusability when it comes to Blazor and Razor components, really kind of maximizing on this component model pattern and architecture. So you don't want to miss it. Let's crack on.